Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a super fascinating 2025 study from the Nuremberg Institute for Market Decisions. We are going to unpack the psychological reality behind made-in labels. You see these little tags literally everywhere, but how much power do they actually hold over our wallets?
Think about the clothes you've got on right now, or maybe the device you're using to watch this. Chances are, at some point, you've flipped it over, checked its made-in tag, and instinctively used that tiny piece of information to judge its worth. We all do it. It's a completely ingrained consumer habit.
But here's the real question. Does that tiny geographical label actually dictate whether you pull out your credit card, or is the perceived power of the made-in tag just a massive marketing illusion? Like, are we buying the product itself, or are we just buying a story about where it came from?
So here's how we're going to solve this mystery today. First, the made-in paradox. Second, what actually drives our purchases. Third, we'll decode the label. Fourth, we'll look at the global trust champions. And finally, some pretty quirky hometown biases.
All right, part one, the made-in paradox and what actually drives our purchases. Let's look at this massive survey of 20,000 adults across 10 different countries, which gives us an incredibly clear picture of global shopping habits.
And wow, this completely shatters a pretty common myth. Just look at these numbers. Core product features absolutely dominate here. Quality is sitting way up at the top at 90, with price right behind it at 81. And then, way down at 47, we have the country where the product was manufactured. I mean, quality and price literally crush the made-in label when you're standing at the checkout line.
So the big takeaway here is that despite companies spending millions slapping origin labels all over their marketing campaigns, they just aren't the star of the show. We overwhelmingly care about what the thing actually does and what it's going to cost us first. The origin label, it's really just a secondary supporting character in the story of why we buy.
Moving on to Section 2, Decoding the Label. Because, honestly, if the country of origin isn't the primary driver of our purchases, what do people even think it means when they see it stamped on a box?
Well, here's how it kind of stacks up in our heads. For about 46% of consumers worldwide, made-in simply means the final assembly happened in that country. A little less than that, 38% expect the quality control to happen there, and get this, only 35% actually expect the raw materials to originate from that specific country. It just goes to show that the actual physical place of production is still the anchor for what this label means to us.
What's really interesting, though, is that the study found consumers totally agree that a product doesn't actually need to be consumed, or even heavily traded, within that made-in country to legitimately earn the label. It's all about the creation process, the assembly and the oversight. It doesn't really matter where it ends up.
Okay, Section 3, the global trust champions. Let's pivot for a second and look at the emotional side of this data to see who actually wins the global label game. Because, yeah, even if it's a secondary factor, trust is still incredibly valuable.
And man, this data reveals a massive gap in global trust. Consumers deeply believe that manufacturers in Germany and Switzerland stick to super high standards. They're sitting pretty at 66% and 64% trust respectively. But then look at the contrast. Trust just absolutely plummets for labels from China at 31% and India at 27%. There's just this undeniable divide in how different nations are perceived on the factory floor.
And you guessed it, that trust translates directly into actual buying behavior. Germany and Switzerland leverage that massive confidence wave to get the highest positive influence on buying decisions worldwide, 65% and 62%. Meanwhile, even though they're absolute manufacturing powerhouses, the Made in China and Made in India labels only really sway about a quarter of global shoppers in a positive way.
All right, on to our final section, hometown bias and quirks. And honestly, this is probably my absolute favorite part of the entire research study. We're looking at the psychological quirks of national pride and some regional affinities that are going to totally surprise you.
Okay, check this out. A whopping 79% of German respondents are positively influenced by their own Made in Germany label. This showcases a massively strong hometown bias. It's this fierce loyalty to domestic manufacturing that researchers actually saw mirrored to varying degrees all over the world. Basically, we just really love to buy from our own backyard.
But here is where the data gets absolutely crazy. An identical 79% of Indian respondents are positively influenced by the Made in the USA label. Just think about that for a second.
Consumers in India actually show a higher affinity for the American manufacturing label than Americans do themselves. They're literally beating the US at their own hometown pride, since American consumers sit slightly lower at 75% for their own label.
Actually, zooming out a bit, the data shows that India just has massive love across the board for foreign European labels. They are completely bridging cultural and geographical gaps purely through sheer consumer trust. For example, the Made in UK label enjoys a huge 67% positive influence rating among Indian shoppers. So this reveals a really cool global dynamic. Yes, citizens generally love their own domestic labels, but emerging markets are massive, enthusiastic champions of European and American manufacturing tags. South Africa views Made in Germany favorably at 71%, and Mexico is right there too, at 66%. It totally proves that the power of a nation's brand travels way, way beyond its borders.
To wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. We've seen that at the end of the day, quality and price rule, but trust in a nation's reputation still profoundly shapes global markets. So the next time you're at the store flipping over a product tag, ask yourself, are you really paying for the raw quality of the item in your hand, or are you just buying into the powerful, invisible psychology of the flag printed on the box? Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning what's behind the label.